Hey folks, welcome back to Stoic Quotes 365. Today, we're diving into a question that hits close to home for so many of us. Why does it feel like the more interest you show, the further they pull away? It's frustrating, confusing, and honestly, it can feel a little unfair. You're putting yourself out there, making an effort to connect, and instead of drawing closer, they seem to slip through your fingers. But here's the thing, it's not about you doing something wrong. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics of human behavior that come into play when emotions and connection are involved. Relationships are anything but straightforward, and sometimes the natural impulse to show someone how much you care can unintentionally create the opposite effect. Why? Because human attraction isn't driven by logic. It's deeply rooted in psychology. It's not just about how much interest you show, it's about how that interest is perceived. When you begin to understand these psychological undercurrents, you'll see that what feels like rejection often has little to do with your worth and more to do with their internal world. Here's the hard truth. When we care deeply, it's easy to become overly invested in how the other person responds. We text more often, try to prove our worth, and sometimes even sacrifice our own boundaries to show them how much they mean to us. While these actions come from a place of genuine care, they can unintentionally shift the balance of the relationship. Instead of building connection, it can make the other person feel overwhelmed, pressured, or even suffocated. But it doesn't have to be this way. Once you learn the underlying dynamics that influence how people respond to interest, you can navigate these situations with confidence and clarity. You'll no longer feel like you're walking on eggshells or overthinking every word and action. Instead, you'll approach relationships from a place of self-assurance and understanding, creating connections that are balanced and fulfilling. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever noticed that people seem most drawn to those who carry a sense of calm independence? It's not about playing hard to get or withholding affection. It's about embodying a sense of inner strength that naturally attracts others. When you're secure in yourself, you create a dynamic where the other person feels drawn to your presence without feeling pressured or controlled. This isn't manipulation. It's the art of connection done right. At this point, you might be wondering, what exactly am I doing wrong? The answer is probably less about what you're doing and more about the subtle ways your actions are being interpreted. For example, constantly seeking reassurance, whether through texts, compliments, or gestures, can signal neediness instead of affection. And as much as we hate to admit it, people are drawn to what feels valuable and scarce. When your presence becomes overly available or predictable, it can lose some of its allure. But don't worry, this doesn't mean you have to play games or pretend to be someone you're not. It's about understanding the balance between showing interest and maintaining your own sense of self-worth. When you approach relationships with a mindset rooted in self-respect, you not only protect your emotional well-being, but also create a dynamic where others naturally value your presence. Stoicism offers powerful guidance here. The Stoics believed in focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. In relationships, this means shifting your focus away from trying to control how someone responds and instead focusing on showing up as your best, most authentic self. When you prioritize your own growth and happiness, you become someone worth chasing, not someone desperately chasing after validation. Before we dive into the psychological insights that explain why they might ignore you despite your interest, take a moment to reflect on this. What would happen if you stopped trying to earn their attention and instead started valuing your own time and energy? That small mindset shift alone can transform the way you approach relationships and how others respond to you. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the hidden reasons behind their behavior and, more importantly, how you can navigate these situations with grace and confidence. Whether you're currently facing this challenge or want to avoid it in the future, the insights we'll uncover today will help you build connections that are both healthy and deeply fulfilling. Let's get started. Number 1. Clinging too tightly? The hidden cost of over-attachment. All right, folks, let's dive into something that hits close to home for so many of us. Attachment. It's natural to want to hold on to something good. But what happens when that attachment becomes overbearing? Whether it's a romantic interest or someone you deeply care for, clinging too tightly can have consequences you might not even realize. Today, we're going to explore why over-attachment can push people away, even when your intentions come from a place of love. Let's start with this. When you feel deeply for someone, there's an instinct to show it, to prove it, to make them see just how much they mean to you. Maybe you text them more often, plan every little thing around their schedule, or constantly look for ways to make them happy. While all of this comes from a good place, the unintended message it can send is, I need you more than I need myself. This isn't to say you shouldn't care or show your affection. The issue arises when your actions cross into the realm of over-dependence. Over-attachment can make the other person feel suffocated, as if they're losing their own independence in the relationship. When that happens, instead of drawing them closer, you may find that they begin to pull away, slowly at first, and then more obviously as time goes on. So why does this happen? It's rooted in human psychology. People are naturally drawn to balance and independence. When one person gives too much of themselves, it can upset that balance, creating an unspoken pressure that the other person might not even be able to articulate. This isn't about playing hard to get or pretending not to care. It's about understanding that healthy relationships thrive on mutual respect and individual strength. Let's think about a practical example. Imagine someone constantly checking in on you, asking how you feel, and expressing concern about every little thing. While you might appreciate their care, over time it can start to feel overwhelming, even if they have the best intentions. That's what over-attachment can feel like to the person on the receiving end. Here's where Stoic wisdom comes into play. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." In relationships, this translates to prioritizing your own life and individuality. The more you focus on building a fulfilling life for yourself, the less you'll feel the need to cling to someone else for your sense of happiness or stability. So, how do you know if you're clinging too tightly? One key sign is if you feel anxious or unsettled when the other person isn't immediately responsive or available. Instead of allowing space in the relationship, you may find yourself trying harder to regain control. This creates a cycle where the more you hold on, the more they might feel the need to let go. What's the solution? Start by shifting your focus inward. Instead of seeking validation from them, invest in your own passions, hobbies, and personal growth. When you have a full, vibrant life outside of the relationship, you bring a sense of balance and confidence that naturally attracts others to you. It's not about withholding your affection. It's about making sure your attachment doesn't overshadow your individuality. Another tip is to practice mindful communication. If you feel the urge to check in constantly, ask yourself, is this coming from a place of connection, or is it driven by my own insecurity? By pausing and reflecting before acting, you can break the cycle of over-attachment and create a healthier dynamic. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you were giving too much in a relationship? Drop a simple "I choose balance" in the comments below to affirm your commitment to creating stronger, healthier connections. Stay tuned for the next section, where we'll explore the subtle yet powerful phenomenon of the slow fade, and how understanding it can save you from unnecessary heartache. You don't want to miss this. Number 2. The slow fade. Why they quietly drift away. All right, folks, let's dig into something that can feel like a mystery. The slow fade. You know what I'm talking about. Everything seems to be going fine, maybe even great. But then suddenly, without any big argument or obvious issue, they begin to pull back. Conversations become shorter, texts take longer to arrive, and the connection you thought was growing starts to slip through your fingers. It's frustrating, confusing, and downright painful. But why does this happen? Here's the thing about the slow fade. It's rarely about something you've done wrong. More often than not, it's a reflection of what's going on within them. When someone quietly drifts away, it's usually because they're feeling uncertain about their own emotions, their readiness for a relationship, or even their ability to handle vulnerability. Instead of addressing these feelings head-on, they retreat, hoping the distance will somehow resolve things. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever been on the receiving end of this? It's so tempting to analyze every word, every interaction, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. You might even blame yourself for being too available or not doing enough. But here's the truth. Their actions are about them, not you. And understanding this can save you from a lot of unnecessary self-doubt. Now, why do people fade out instead of just being honest? It often comes down to fear of confrontation, fear of hurting your feelings, or even fear of acknowledging their own uncertainties. It's easier for them to slip away quietly than to have a difficult conversation. Unfortunately, while this approach may feel easier in the moment, it leaves the other person, you, feeling confused and unresolved. Here's where you need to shift your perspective. Instead of chasing them or trying to fix the connection, take a step back and focus on yourself. The slow fade isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a sign that the other person isn't ready or willing to meet you where you are. And while that's disappointing, it's also freeing. It gives you the chance to redirect your energy toward people and relationships that truly value you. But let's get practical. How can you handle the slow fade when it's happening? First, resist the urge to overcompensate. When someone starts pulling away, it's natural to want to lean in, sending more messages, making more plans, or trying harder to connect. But this often backfires, making them feel even more pressured. Instead, match their energy. If they're pulling back, give them space to figure out what they want. Second, focus on observing rather than reacting. Pay attention to patterns in their behavior. Are they consistently distant, or is this a temporary phase? Sometimes, people go through personal challenges that make them less available, and it has nothing to do with the relationship. By staying calm and reflective, you can respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Third, set boundaries. If their fading behavior is leaving you feeling confused or undervalued, it's okay to address it. For example, you could say, "I've noticed some distance between us lately, and I just want to check in. Is everything okay?" This opens the door for communication without placing blame. If they're willing to engage in that conversation, great. If not, their response, or lack of response, gives you valuable insight into where they stand. The Stoics teach us an invaluable lesson here. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In relationships, this reminds us that chasing after someone who is pulling away often leaves us feeling emotionally bankrupt. Instead, focus on the connections that bring you fulfillment and joy, not the ones that leave you questioning your worth. To wrap this up, the slow fade is a tough pill to swallow, but it's also a learning moment. It shows you who is truly ready to invest in a connection with you and who isn't. And while it's painful to let go, it's far better than clinging to someone who isn't willing to show up fully. Remember, your energy is precious. Spend it wisely. Comment below, "I honor my energy." Let's affirm our commitment to valuing ourselves and focusing on connections that truly matter. In the next section, we'll explore how emotions can quietly shape a relationship, often in ways we don't realize. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss this. Number 3, when emotions take over, the silent damage done all right. Folks, let's talk about one of the biggest relationship disruptors, when emotions take control. We've all been there, right? That moment when you're so caught up in your feelings, whether it's anger, insecurity, or even excitement, that you act without thinking. While emotions are a natural and beautiful part of any connection, letting them steer the wheel can quietly damage the very relationship you're trying to nurture. Here's the thing. Emotions are powerful. They're what make us human and allow us to connect deeply with others. But when emotions run unchecked, they can cloud our judgment and lead to impulsive actions that we later regret. Think about it. How many times have you sent a long, emotional text in the heat of the moment, only to wish you could unsend it an hour later? Or maybe you've snapped at someone because of frustration, even though deep down you knew they didn't deserve it. Why does this happen? It's all about how our brains are wired. When we experience strong emotions, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for emotional reactions, takes over. This can override the rational part of our brain, making us act out of impulse rather than reason. While this is a natural response, it can create a cycle of overreactions and misunderstandings in relationships. Let's break it down. When emotions take over, they often trigger defensive behaviors. Maybe you feel ignored and react by withdrawing or being overly critical. These actions aren't intentional, but they can leave the other person feeling confused or hurt. Over time, these small moments of emotional imbalance add up, creating cracks in the foundation of trust and connection. But here's the good news. Emotions don't have to control you. Recognizing when you're being driven by feelings rather than logic is the first step to breaking free from this cycle. For example, if you feel hurt because someone hasn't texted back, take a moment to ask yourself, am I reacting to the situation? Or am I letting my fears and insecurities take over? This pause can help you respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Now, let's talk about how to navigate emotions in a healthy way. The key is to validate your feelings without letting them dictate your actions. If you're upset, it's okay to acknowledge that. Write it down, talk to a friend, or take a walk to clear your mind. Giving yourself space to process emotions allows you to approach the situation with a clearer perspective. Stoic philosophy offers a great approach here. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. In relationships, this means focusing on how you respond to emotional triggers, rather than trying to control the other person's behavior. When you stay grounded, you not only protect your peace, but also create a more stable and respectful dynamic. Let's consider an example. Imagine you're in a relationship where the other person seems distant. Your initial reaction might be frustration or insecurity. Why are they pulling away? Did I do something wrong? Instead of confronting them in an emotional outburst, take a step back. Reflect on what might be causing their behavior and approach the conversation with curiosity rather than blame. This shift not only helps you avoid unnecessary conflict, but also strengthens the connection by showing emotional maturity. Here's another tip. Practice emotional regulation techniques. Whether it's deep breathing, mindfulness, or journaling, Finding ways to calm your mind in the moment can prevent emotions from taking over. The goal isn't to suppress your feelings, but to channel them in a way that builds rather than breaks the relationship. Finally, remember that emotions are a two-way street. Just as your feelings influence your actions, the other person's emotions shape their behavior too. By creating a space where both of you can express yourselves without fear of judgment or backlash, you build a foundation of trust and understanding. To wrap this up, emotions are a powerful force in relationships, but they don't have to be destructive. By recognizing when your feelings are taking over and learning to manage them effectively, you can protect your connections and foster deeper, more meaningful bonds. Comment below, "I master my emotions." Let's affirm our commitment to navigating relationships with clarity and balance. Next, we'll dive into the subtle ways people lose interest and the signals you might be missing. Stick around, you don't want to miss this. Number 4, losing interest. The subtle signals you might miss. All right, folks, let's talk about one of the most frustrating and confusing experiences in any relationship, when someone begins to lose interest, but the signs are so subtle that you barely notice until it's too late. If you've ever found yourself wondering what changed, or why things feel different, you're not alone. Losing interest doesn't usually happen overnight. It's a gradual process, marked by small, easily overlooked signals that can add up over time. So, why do people lose interest? One key reason is a lack of emotional engagement. Relationships thrive on a sense of connection, and when that connection weakens, interest naturally fades. But here's the tricky part. People often won't tell you outright that their feelings are changing. Instead, they might communicate it through their actions, or lack thereof. That's why it's so important to tune into these subtle signals before they become a pattern. Let's explore some common signs. One of the biggest indicators is a shift in communication. Maybe they used to text you first thing in the morning, but now those messages come less frequently or not at all. Maybe their responses are shorter or they take longer to reply. While this doesn't always mean they're losing interest, it's worth paying attention to if it becomes a consistent change. Another subtle sign is a lack of enthusiasm. Think about the way they used to light up when talking about plans with you. If that excitement has been replaced with indifference or vague excuses, it might be a sign that their interest is waning. This isn't about blaming them. It's about understanding where they're coming from and what might be causing this shift. One reason people lose interest is when the relationship starts to feel predictable or stagnant. Humans are wired to crave novelty and excitement, and when those elements are missing, it can make the connection feel less engaging. This doesn't mean you need to reinvent yourself or constantly plan elaborate dates, but it does mean finding ways to keep the relationship dynamic. A little spontaneity, whether it's trying a new activity together or simply being playful, can go a long way. Now, here's where things get complicated. Sometimes the signs of lost interest have less to do with you and more to do with what's happening in their own life. Stress, personal challenges, or even self-doubt can make someone withdraw emotionally, even if their feelings for you haven't changed. In these cases, it's important to approach the situation with empathy rather than jumping to conclusions. So, what can you do when you notice these subtle signals? First, don't panic. Losing interest doesn't always mean the relationship is doomed. It might just mean it needs a little attention. Start by opening up a conversation. Ask them how they're feeling, and be willing to listen without judgment. Sometimes, simply acknowledging the shift can help reignite the connection. Next, focus on what you can control, your own energy and presence in the relationship. Are you bringing positivity and excitement, or are you letting your own insecurities cloud the connection? When you show up as your authentic, confident self, it naturally encourages the other person to do the same. And here's an important reminder. Don't ignore your own needs. While it's crucial to be understanding, you also deserve a relationship where your efforts are reciprocated. If you're consistently feeling undervalued or unsure of where you stand, it might be time to reevaluate the dynamic and decide what's best for your well-being. Before we move on, let me ask you, have you ever missed the subtle signs that someone was losing interest? Share your experience in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're enjoying this conversation and want more insights to strengthen your relationships, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep bringing you content that truly makes a difference. Let's keep growing together. Number 5. Strength versus neediness, what truly draws them. In all right, folks, let's get into one of the biggest dynamics that can make or break a relationship, the balance between strength and neediness. Whether you're aware of it or not, this balance plays a huge role in how people perceive you and ultimately how they feel about you. Strength and neediness aren't just about actions. They're about the energy you bring into the connection. Let's start with neediness. When someone senses neediness, it doesn't necessarily mean you're asking for too much. Instead, it's the vibe of seeking constant validation, approval, or reassurance. For example, repeatedly checking in to see if they're still interested, needing them to confirm their feelings constantly, or overly depending on their attention to feel good about yourself. This can feel overwhelming for the other person, as it puts the responsibility for your happiness squarely on their shoulders. Here's the thing. No one wants to feel like they're someone else's sole source of validation. It's not that they don't care about you. It's that this level of dependency can be draining. People are naturally drawn to those who exude confidence and a sense of self-sufficiency because it signals that you're whole and secure on your own. This brings us to strength. Strength isn't about being aloof or pretending not to care. It's about showing up with a calm, grounded energy that says, I value this connection, but I also value myself. Strength means you're able to enjoy the relationship without losing yourself in it. It's about being open and vulnerable while still maintaining your sense of independence. So, how do you demonstrate strength without veering into indifference? Start by recognizing your own worth. When you know your value, you don't feel the need to constantly prove it to someone else. Instead of seeking external validation, you find that reassurance within yourself. This doesn't just make you feel better. It also makes you more attractive to others. Why? Because people are drawn to those who carry themselves with quiet confidence. Let's consider an example. Imagine two people. One constantly asks, "Do you like me? Are we okay?" The other says, "I enjoy spending time with you, and I value this connection." The difference is clear. One comes from a place of neediness, the other from a place of strength. Which one feels more compelling? The person who expresses confidence and self-assurance, of course. Strength also means being okay with space in the relationship. When you allow for distance without panicking, you show that you trust the connection enough not to hover over it. This kind of detachment doesn't push people away. It draws them in because it creates a sense of ease and freedom. But let's be real. Everyone feels needy sometimes. The key isn't to eliminate those feelings entirely. It's to manage them in a way that doesn't overwhelm the relationship. When you catch yourself slipping into neediness, pause and ask, am I acting out of fear? Or am I showing up from a place of confidence? This self-awareness is a form of strength in itself. At the end of the day, relationships are about balance. When you show strength, you create a dynamic where both people feel valued and respected. It's not about playing games or withholding affection. It's about being secure enough in yourself to give and receive love freely. What about you? Have you noticed the difference between neediness and strength in your own relationships? Drop a comment below with the words, "I choose strength," to affirm your commitment to bringing your best self to every connection. Let's keep building deeper, healthier relationships together. Number 6. It's all about the feeling, how they experience your presence. All right, folks, let's take a moment to reflect on something crucial in relationships: the way someone feels when they're around you. It's not about what you say or even what you do. It's about the emotional experience you create in your presence. People may forget the words you use, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. That's the key to connection, attraction, and ultimately, lasting bonds. Think about the relationships in your life, both romantic and platonic. Who are the people you look forward to spending time with? Chances are they're the ones who make you feel understood, valued, and uplifted. On the flip side, think about the relationships that felt draining or stressful. It's not always because of something obvious. They may have simply created an emotional environment that didn't resonate with you. This dynamic is no different when it comes to romantic attraction. If someone associates your presence with feelings of stress, insecurity, or pressure, they're naturally going to pull away. But if they feel safe, energized, and appreciated in your presence, that's what keeps them coming back. So, how do you create that kind of emotional experience? It starts with awareness. Pay attention to how your energy comes across. Are you calm and grounded, or do you bring anxiety and tension into the interaction? Your emotional state is contagious. If you're at ease, the other person will feel more comfortable and open around you. Another important factor is how well you listen. Listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about making the other person feel seen and understood. When you're fully present in a conversation, making eye contact, asking thoughtful questions, and responding with genuine interest, you create a sense of connection that's incredibly powerful. It's not about agreeing with everything they say. It's about showing that their thoughts and feelings matter to you. Let's dive deeper into this idea of presence. Being present doesn't mean you have to be perfect or always upbeat. It means showing up authentically and giving your full attention to the moment. Even small gestures, like putting your phone away during a conversation or remembering little details they've shared, can have a big impact. These actions send the message that you value the time you spend together and aren't distracted by other things. Now, let's talk about the emotional tone you set. Are you creating an environment of positivity and warmth, or are you inadvertently bringing negativity into the connection? While it's natural to vent or share frustrations sometimes, it's important to balance that with moments of joy and gratitude. When someone associates you with positive emotions, it strengthens the bond and makes your presence something they look forward to. But here's the catch. Creating a positive emotional experience doesn't mean being fake or suppressing your own feelings. It's about authenticity. If you're feeling off, it's okay to share that, as long as you do so in a way that fosters connection rather than drains it. For example, saying, "I've been feeling a little stressed, but I really appreciate being here with you." He invites the other person to connect with you on a deeper level without overwhelming them. Let's not forget the importance of balance. While it's crucial to be mindful of how your presence affects the other person, it's equally important to consider how their presence makes you feel. Relationships should be a two-way street. If you're constantly putting in the effort to create a positive emotional environment, but aren't receiving the same energy in return, it might be time to reassess the dynamic. To wrap this up, remember that relationships are built on feelings, not just words or actions. By being present, authentic, and attentive, You can create an emotional experience that draws people closer to you. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up in a way that feels genuine and meaningful. Comment below, I create positive energy. Let's affirm our commitment to fostering connections that feel good for both ourselves and the people we care about. Stay tuned, there's more to uncover in the next section. Number 7. The Allure of Mystery. Why imagination matters all right. Folks, let's talk about one of the most underrated aspects of attraction, mystery. When you think about it, mystery isn't about withholding information or playing games. It's about creating a sense of intrigue that keeps the other person wanting to know more. It's about leaving just enough unsaid to spark their imagination and deepen their curiosity. Have you ever noticed how people are drawn to what they don't fully understand? That's because imagination is one of the most powerful tools in human psychology. When someone doesn't have all the answers about you, their mind fills in the blanks. They start wondering, thinking, and imagining. And that's where the magic happens. It's not manipulation. It's the natural pull of curiosity. Here's the thing. Relationships thrive on a balance of familiarity and novelty. When everything about you is predictable, the spark can start to fade. But when you leave space for discovery, it keeps the connection alive and exciting. This doesn't mean you have to hide parts of yourself or be overly secretive. It means showing enough to build trust and connection while letting the other person explore who you are over time. For example, instead of immediately sharing every detail of your life, let the connection unfold naturally. Share your passions, but don't overwhelm them with every goal or dream you've ever had. Show your personality, but leave room for them to wonder about your thoughts, your motivations, and your depth. This kind of mystery doesn't just keep them interested, it also creates a sense of respect and admiration. But here's the catch. Mystery only works when paired with authenticity. If you're trying too hard to seem elusive, it can come off as disingenuous or manipulative. The goal isn't to confuse them, it's to allow the relationship to develop organically, with layers revealed over time. Think of it as a dance, each step bringing you closer while still leaving room for the unknown. Let's consider an everyday example. Imagine you're on a date, and instead of answering every question with complete detail, you leave a little room for curiosity. If they ask about your weekend plans, instead of saying, "I'm going hiking at this specific trail with these friends," you might say, "I've got some outdoor plans. Can't wait to recharge." It's honest, but it leaves a little space for them to wonder and follow up. Mystery isn't just about what you say, it's also about how you carry yourself. Confidence plays a huge role here. When you're comfortable with who you are, you don't feel the need to explain or justify everything. This kind of calm self-assurance is magnetic because it shows that you're secure enough to let the connection evolve naturally. So here's the takeaway. The allure of mystery isn't about withholding or playing hard to get. It's about inviting someone into your world at a pace that feels authentic and engaging. By allowing curiosity to bloom, you create a connection that feels dynamic, alive, and endlessly interesting. What about you? How have you used the power of mystery in your own relationships? Drop a comment below with the words, "I embrace curiosity," and let's keep the conversation going. Number 8. The magnetism of composed detachment. All right, folks, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood yet incredibly powerful traits in relationships. Composed detachment. At first glance, detachment might sound like indifference, but in reality, it's a state of emotional clarity that can transform how others perceive you. Detachment isn't about caring less. It's about maintaining your inner balance while still engaging deeply in the connection. So, why is detachment so magnetic? It's simple. When you're emotionally composed, you radiate confidence and self-assuredness. You're not seeking validation from anyone because you've already found it within yourself. This makes others naturally gravitate toward you. People are drawn to those who are steady, calm, and unapologetically themselves. Let's break this down further. Composed detachment allows you to give freely in a relationship without attaching your self-worth to the outcome. It's the opposite of neediness. Imagine someone who's always anxious, trying to decipher every text, or constantly needing reassurance. Contrast that with someone who values the connection but doesn't lose sleep over it. Which energy feels more appealing? Exactly. Here's the thing. Detachment doesn't mean ignoring or withholding affection. It means showing up with authenticity while refusing to let someone's behavior dictate your emotional state. When you're detached, you can navigate ups and downs with grace, creating an aura of stability that others find irresistible. This idea ties deeply to the Stoic philosophy. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Translated into relationships, this means finding contentment in the connection without becoming overly reliant on it. Your value doesn't diminish if the relationship doesn't go the way you hoped. And that mindset is what makes you so compelling. Let's look at a real-world example. Think about someone you admire, maybe a friend or a colleague. Chances are they have a calm presence, the ability to handle challenges without being thrown off course, and a sense of purpose beyond the approval of others. That's the essence of composed detachment, and it's as attractive in relationships as it is in life. But how do you cultivate this quality? Start by focusing on your own life. Build a routine, pursue your passions, and stay grounded in your values. The more fulfilled you feel independently, the less you'll feel the need to cling to anyone else. And here's the paradox. The less you chase, the more people are drawn to you. To wrap this up, composed detachment isn't about caring less. It's about caring smarter. By centering yourself and maintaining emotional balance, you create a space where genuine, healthy connections can thrive. Remember, you are your greatest asset. And the more you embrace that truth, the more magnetic you become. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope these insights gave you a new perspective on building stronger, healthier connections. Remember, relationships are as much about understanding yourself as they are about understanding others. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep growing.